Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Adobe Fonts show. It's very good to be back.
Hey,
Hey, we have an
we're
excellent,
back.
we are back. This is episode 55, I believe. And the topic today is from blank page to typographic poster. We have a very special guest to take us through that. And we'll get to that as quickly as we can. It's good to see everyone in the chat who's already here.
Yes, and say hi if you haven't already. Tell us where you're from. We always like to hear where are you from? What time is it over there? What are you doing? Are you working while watching us?
Yes, are we off in the background? Are you paying, very close attention? How's this all working? Do we have your rapt attention? I hope so. I hope we have your rapt attention. But if we're in the background, that's fine too. If you've got work to do, understand.
Yes, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Ari, the library manager for Adobe Fonts. My team works with all of the Foundry partners that design the fonts that are included in your Creative Cloud subscription. We currently have about 170 partners, and we consistently add fonts to expand the library. And I'm located in Bay Area, California.
Nice. I am Ben, previously in Brooklyn, now in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a content producer for Adobe Fonts, so making things like the stream and other videos. And basically, I'm just trying to help you get the best and most out of type when you're using Creative Cloud. That's what I try to do. And for those of you new to Adobe Fonts is a library of over 25,000 fonts that you have for personal and commercial use if you have Creative Cloud. So if you've never used Adobe Fonts before, I would just go to fonts.adobe.com. That's pretty much all you need to do. On that homepage, you'll see trending and recommendations and all kinds of stuff to kind of start your rabbit hole journey of looking at type. So if you go there, you'll probably get lost in there for a little while and find some good fonts. So that's what I recommend.
Yeah, and here on the Adobe Fonts show, we talk about all things fonts. We have great workshops with professionals in the type world. And if you like our show, you can subscribe to Adobe Live on YouTube and follow us, Adobe Fonts on Behance, to be updated on all future episodes and to watch replays of old episodes.
Speaking of which, if you are on YouTube right now and you want to join the chat, come over to behance.net/live and you'll find us there and you can participate in the chat and ask our guest questions. So speaking of
Yes,
which,
I'm sure you want to ask.
let's bring our guest on. Our guest today is Andrey Azizov, and he is a prolific musician, educator on the internet, and also designer. He creates design assets and does tutorials on TikTok and Instagram and has a very large following and has made a lot of just awesome stuff. So we're very excited to have him, and he's going to take us through a poster design today. And Andrey, welcome to the Adobe Fonts show.
How's it going, guys?
It's going all right.
Hello.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
I'm doing good. Yeah, excited to be here and talk about fonts because that's what I love talking about. And yeah, just going through my design process, my inspiration, and just about everything you might want to know about what I do on a daily basis. And fonts is a really big part of that.
Yes, I'm probably going to be asking too many music questions for a fonts related stream, but it's unavoidable. I
I'll
can't help
stop
it.
him from asking
Yes,
music
if Ari will stop me if I get too deep into the weeds. But I'll definitely have some questions.
Definitely. And honestly, yeah, I think music is a massive, massive part of what I do and is a big source of inspo / like a lot of what I do on like the client side, as well as like my personal hobby. And like a lot of what I do is like cover art design and everything. So there's a lot of kind of like intermingled aspects between design and music for me. So I think it actually will kind of play into what I do.
Nice. Yeah, I think my biggest question, you could, if you want to touch on this while we're going through this, that's great. But if not, I'll ask it at the end. But is basically, how do you do so many things without getting burnt out? So like, how do you keep music fun and inspiring and not a slog? How do you keep design fun and inspiring and not a slog? How do you keep, because you've got your you've got your hands in a lot of jars and you're doing a lot of things. And so I think that would be my biggest question, which you can dive into now, or we can just,
Don't answer yet.
Okay, we'll
That's
touch
too
on that
long of
later.
an answer. Let's go
Yeah,
to the
that's
poll first.
perfect.
Okay, we're going to the poll. Okay, so our poll today is when it comes to typography, and you can pick a number here, or just tell us where you're at with typography if you want. But we have 1, wait, what is typography? 2, getting started. 3, familiar with the basics. And 4, super typographic wizard. So let us know in the chat where you're at with typography. Ari, where would you say you're at on this list? I'm probably between 3 and 4. I don't think I'm a super typographic wizard.
Be between things. I think you have to choose one.
I'm
There's
going
4
wizard then. I'm gonna own it.
Just own it,
Yeah,
Ben.
I'm gonna own it. I'm going all out. Now I have something to prove, and so I think it's gonna up my game, and I'm gonna have to push myself. But I'm going for super typographic wizard.
Good. Yeah, I'll have to go with 4 as well.
Nice. All right. I think Andrey, I think we know where you land on this list.
Honestly, like the thing that I was gonna say is like yes, like it's such a big part of what I do, but like I never took design, like formal design classes outside of like high school. So like a lot of things I actually like am kind of approaching from like a pretty novice perspective, but I think
Nice.
that does kind of like help me because I'm almost like approaching it from like a sense of like wonder and not knowing exactly, every single technical thing to get bogged down in when I'm creating design. So a lot of it's kind of like based on feel and vibe. So I think that actually like you don't need to be a wizard per se and know every little thing technically about fonts to be good with like working with them.
I couldn't agree more, and I feel like the same applies with music as well. If you can get way too bogged down in the super detailed minutia, and if the wonder is gone, well, then everything is lost.
Exactly. I agree.
Yes. Well, we have most people in the chat are 3, and there's 1 4.
So familiar with the basics.
So-
Okay, I think that's good. I think that's a good place to start. All right, shall we dive in?
And we have people from
Definitely.
from all over the world. We have Netherlands, Nairobi, Texas, Toronto.
Nice.
Everyone's looking forward to what we have to talk about today.
Excellent. All right, we're going to dive in with Andrey now. Take it away.
Awesome. Hey guys, thanks Ben for the intro. I'll do my own little kind of like spiel and intro on what I do as well. But kind of like a roadmap for what I'm trying to do on the stream today is kind of talk to you about my background, and then how I create things, how I get inspired when I'm creating things. So literally going from that first step of inspiration to the actual like nitty gritty of design. Probably going like a little bit overarching, not getting too lost in the weeds. So it's like a boring technical, just me sitting in Photoshop the entire time. And then just showing you guys how I deal with creative block or all the different other challenges that come with designing things. And then, yeah, hopefully answer some questions. I'm sure you guys will have some after my random spiel about fonts. So excited to get into it with you guys. But yeah, so a little bit about me. I am a Brooklyn-based designer and musician, originally from Westchester, Pennsylvania. So if we have anyone very like Northeast kind of affiliated person, but yeah, so a lot of the design that I do tends to be for like musicians, artists, just because that's my inspiration and that's like a lot of what I do. And I make music myself, so it's always fun to work on things surrounding music. Like I literally got my start designing, just doing my own cover art and everything. So it was literally from the get-go was what I had my eyes set on. And I just had my Instagram up right now. Is my screen sharing?
Yep, you're good.
Cool. So yeah, I post some of the stuff that I do on Instagram. So it's a really good way to get to know my design. One of the most recent things that I'm really proud of is designing the cover art for the Kid Laroi single with some really, really awesome artists. And fun fact, this is an Adobe font actually up here, the Too Much. Originally, and I'll go into the benefits of Adobe fonts in like a very like authentic way, because it actually has saved my skin in so many situations, like working with labels, for example. This font that like originally was used for this cover art was not an Adobe font. It was just some other font that I found. And the day that it was supposed to be delivered, they were like, we don't have the license for this, even though I had purchased the license, but they weren't comfortable. So I had to go on to Adobe Fonts because they had that license. And so essentially I like really heavily kind of edited an Adobe font to look pretty similar to what I had originally. But that's just like an example of the kind of work that I do. So yeah, really exciting project. And if you want to scroll on my Instagram, I'm just at Andrey Azizov on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah, I do a lot of client work. And then I also have a lot of like educational videos, Photoshop tutorials, Illustrator tutorials, my top 5 fonts. My top 5 Adobe fonts is actually one of my favorite series that I do. So I'll do like top 5 retro fonts, top 5 sans serifs, etc. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Again, yeah, I do wear a lot of hats and I'm always like doing different things, but that also kind of keeps the inspiration fresh, the creative energy fresh. And it's a really fun way to work because I get to be inspired by different things. I get to meet a lot of different people in different industries and everything. And yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions or anything, but I was going to start off with my source of inspiration. And I kind of have my big 3 that I'll walk you through. The first being, and me and Ben talked about this, my favorite site in the universe, which is Fonts in Use. And if you don't know, it's kind of like one of those things, like if you know, you know, and you probably love this site. I'm not exaggerating. I could spend hours and hours on this site. Essentially, it's kind of just a collection of designs, like curated designs, but your user kind of submitted designs ranging from like literally very modern contemporary stuff to I think it like ranges to like the 1800s or something really. And it tags like with the identified fonts that are in it. So um, I'll kind of just do like a quick overview, but you can kind of tell from the homepage the deal. So
There's also a ton of great album covers in here. That's usually where I end up. I'm sure you do as well.
Absolutely. It's such a good inspiration for like album art and everything. And yeah, everything's broken down by tags, fonts and everything. So it's like a really good way to just like go from like one point to the next point and just end up in like some crazy spot that you never thought you would. But yeah.
Have you ever submitted your designs?
So for example, we click on this Miles Davis cover art, and we have one of my favorite fonts, actually, Avant-Garde Gothic. And it links out to every single kind of, literally ranging from the 70s to just everything, like any way that the font has been used in all sorts of different applications. So it's just like an unreal way to figure out how people are using similar fonts, like a sans serif, essentially, in their work. So it's like a really good way to honestly get familiar with fonts. And yeah, the thing with me is like I said, kind of having the like wonder when I'm approaching fonts is important for the creative process because yeah, it's just you're seeing a ton of different ways that it's been used. So that's kind of like my big like North Star when I'm getting inspiration for a design.
Nice. One thing also I love about when you go to a font page on Fonts in Use, it'll tell you similar or related typefaces. Yeah, up at the top. So if you want to use something kind of like that or not the same, but you could, if you click on it, then you'll see all of the other examples of that font in use if they have them in here, and you can kind of, it's just a rabbit hole worth going down.
This is like that's the other really cool thing about this is that it can take you to like, we got from avant-garde to this like what is it, Slam magazine like font like a few clicks. It's almost like that Wikipedia game where actually I think that'd be a pretty funny like fun concept for a game show, or like kind of the Wikipedia game where you try to get from one topic to another topic, except it's like fonts. I think there's something there. But yeah, like sorting things by tags. I have all my likes for, so as you can tell, I really like retro stuff. But I also do really like kind of like super contemporary modern looking stuff as well. So just the fact that it's next to each other like is really good for like kind of like framing your brain when you're thinking about fonts and design. Yeah, like I said, this is my like holy Bible for fonts, for inspiration rather. My second one, and obviously I'm like very social media kind of native when it comes to design. So the other big source of inspiration for me is Instagram. So I like kind of the past like few years have kind of just been curating and like following accounts I like. I would say if you have like a personal Instagram, like maybe it's worth just making like a design Instagram where you can both post your work but also like kind of curate like a following list, so you're not like getting really inspired by stuff and then there's like your nephew's like birthday party or something like popping up. Like I think just having it all in one spot is pretty nice, and I will just bookmark anything that makes me feel anything in terms of like this is cool, this is inspiring me. Like I don't do photography, but a lot of the stuff on here is photography just because it kind of like gives you a, I don't know, just like a sense of just like a creative energy. And again, like
Yeah, it's like
anything
the
that
mood board.
just kind of lights a spark in your brain when you're like in those early stages of a project, I think is super important. And a lot of the times, like if I'm creating a mood board around something, I'll just like screenshot a few of these and put it in a folder so that when I'm thinking through what I want like a design to look like, I'll have like a reference, like a really curated reference of what I want. So yeah, that's like I'm a big proponent of like having like a design Instagram. Like mine's kind of like a mixed thing because I'm also doing social media content around it, but a curated Instagram following I think is pretty important for, especially if you want to display your work like on social media and everything. I think I would definitely recommend it. A lot of my clients come from networking on social media, TikTok and Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah. And then my third kind of big inspiration source is Flickr, believe it or not. And the reason for that is because I love retro fonts, again, like I said. And for some reason, a bunch of kind of like people just love scanning random old stuff that they have and putting it in really like organized albums on Flickr. So there's like just so much really cool old design, like specifically like 70s and 80s design, that is just like, for me, like the serotonin in my head, like when I'm just looking at this stuff, like alone can inspire me just to, create something. And it's like, it's a little tougher, obviously, because things aren't tagged with the specific font. But if you are spending enough time, honestly, on fonts in use, you'll probably be able to call these out and figure it out, or at least know something that's similar. And then using that related font tool, like a lot of the times that's kind of how I'm like finding what I'm looking for. There's also a lot of great tools online, like What the Font is a classic one to just like identify what font you're looking at pretty much.
Nice.
And I wanted to shout out a really awesome designer, Emma. She goes by Burr's Letters, because she has this vintage design archive. It's like a big Google Doc of just like the most random stuff, but let's go to vintage menus. Sounds cool. And it's literally just albums of
Wow, that's cool.
really
Super cool.
Yeah, design stuff. The record sleeves. And the thing with this is like, and I'll always just like favorite anything, again, like the bookmarking on Instagram. I'll just favorite anything that kind of catches my eye or gets me interested. And again, yeah, it's just like you can, even though it's like old, it's like you can apply elements, you can apply layouts, you can apply like just like principles that you're seeing, like pairing like this crazy font with just like a normal sans serif or colors and stuff like that. Yeah, having the B be the hole in the vinyl, like that kind of thing. Even if you're just taking like a tiny little concept from something, I think it's always a good a good way to start because you're just like finding that one source of inspiration. But yeah, those are my big three. And I
Nice.
would definitely recommend that to any designer. Like get on those if you're ever kind of like looking for inspiration, don't know what you want to make, especially if you like retro stuff like me. There's really nothing better. But yeah, that's kind of like the first part of my when I'm working on a project is what I'm starting out with.
I feel like too, when you feel a little bit like you don't know where to start, if you look through this, it kind of tells you what you like and what moves you. Like
Definitely.
it's a way to like revisit, and you might forget you ever put this stuff in there. It could be years old, and you scroll past it, and it moves you again, and it's like, oh, this is the stuff I like. Okay, I'm getting the
Absolutely.
yeah. It's
I
good.
think this might be, let's see how many pages. I don't know if it has like that last feature, but this has to be like 40 to 50 pages long. And it's like
Wow.
I can just get re-inspired again by stuff that I forgot about. But yeah, at one point moved me. So I know, like it's not like you're going to lose that inspiration. So yeah, it's just a really good way to just figure out what you like, what your style is, without even having to put pen to paper and like creating something. Because I think like for a lot of designers, especially getting started out, like you could really do anything design wise. It's literally a blank page. So sometimes almost that freedom is a little bit constricting. So I think figuring out curating your taste is actually like a pretty important part of designing because, like anyone can learn Photoshop probably or Illustrator in a certain amount of time, but obviously not everyone is like a successful graphic designer. So I think like the taste element is actually like pretty important when it comes to designing.
Nice.
But yeah, with that said, I'd love to kind of like switch over to the actual like creation portion of what I do because that's obviously the most fun. And yeah, having that kind of element of like, what are we gonna do? Like, what is this gonna end up like? Is I think like feeding off of that and being excited by that is a really good way to start. So kind of my idea was to create like a typographic poster, and this is like one of my favorite ones that kind of went viral early on. It's sometimes I get emotional over fonts. It's like an old tweet, and I just my favorite part of this is just the amount of fonts that I was able to throw into one design. I love like the kind of like almost like breaking the rules type of design where it's like, if you were going to a class where they were talking about designing with fonts, I'm assuming they would probably tell you to keep it to like 2 or 3 fonts. So being able to make something look good with just a ton of fonts and like breaking those rules, I think is it's like a fun exercise. Like, could you fly too close to the sun and make a terrible poster? Yes. But could you also get something that actually works? Also, yes. So I think it's like, it'll be a fun challenge to do on a stream, definitely. I hope it turns out pretty good. But maybe from like, with some input from the chat or, yeah, some input, I think would be, I think we can get to something really cool. And haven't even started my Adobe font spiel yet, but I'm going to try to do it with a bunch of Adobe fonts. I think I did in this instance too. A lot of these were Adobe fonts. But yeah, I had a few concepts for like what I wanted it to say, but if the chat wants to kind of contribute like some ideas, I'd be happy for that too.
I think if you have a couple ideas, you could certainly
Yeah,
pose those to the chat and see if they have a favorite of them. But
definitely.
also,
Yeah. I actually only had one idea. I lied there. My one that I wanted to do was there's that Ray Shremmerd song from like 2016, I Ain't Got No Type. And I thought that was kind of funny because the double meaning with typography. So that's kind of if that inspires anything in anyone too, I'd love to hear some examples. But I want to do kind of like one of those designs where like every word is a different font and see if we can make it look good because I think it's a good challenge.
So 5 fonts, at least.
Also, real quick, there are 2 people who are in PA in the chat, and they were chatting back and forth about that, so that was cool.
Oh my God, we're in PA.
State
Can
capital?
you guys hear me?
State capital.
I
I'm
can
not
hear you.
familiar. I'm like pretty like southeast oriented, and I haven't really gone outside that.
And then, yeah, state capital, and then somewhere else. Oh, Uh, Abington.
Abington.
Yeah.
Not familiar, but I love that. I
And
love any sort of PA connection is amazing. Also, like, yeah, New York to PA is such a fun. It's like so close too, but like I feel like getting out of the big city and going to PA, especially like where my parents are from, it's kind of like a little bit rural, suburban. So it's like honestly, that's another good source of like inspiration is just kind of changing your surroundings. So if you have that luxury of being able to go to like a different place, I feel like I'm bringing a different creative energy when I'm designing at home, like at my parents and New York, which is kind of like a thing you don't really think about, but it definitely affects the vibe of everything, I guess, if you're putting stuff together. But yeah, love that. So yeah, Adobe Fonts. Let's kind of go. I'll show you my way of using Adobe Fonts, and especially with something like this where we're going to be matching a bunch of different stuff, like a bunch of different fonts and styles. I'll kind of show you how I approach it. And so off the bat, literally today, I opened the homepage just for the stream, and I already noticed this like really cool font called New Astro, which now that I'm looking at it, like combines 3 different fonts. Like I'm seeing aspects of like a kind of like Bauhaus type of with those like the B specifically. I'm seeing it there. Then another font embryonic with that E looking like that, like it's a super unique E. And then also like with this S here on bioscience, it's a little bit Mater Textura, I think is how it's called. I also don't know how to pronounce this stuff because I never say it out loud. I just read it. And I'm sure I've been saying everything so wrong in my head. But 3 of my favorite fonts, and they've kind of like distilled it into this really cool, really cool font called New Astro. And we were chatting about this designer, Miles, a little bit. A lot of these fonts I've used pretty heavily. This is another kind of new one that I just saw, New Order, but New Spirit and New Kansas are some of my favorites. And the really cool thing about these and Adobe fonts in general is there's like a lot of kind of like people's takes on / some pretty like accurate recreations of a lot of the retro fonts that you see on like Fonts in Use, for example. And the reason that's so helpful is, and Adobe Fonts in general is, like I was saying earlier with that, like the Kid Leroy project, labels, for example, because like a lot of the time I'm working with labels or like any brands, obviously too, are going to be very strict about like font licensing, and a lot of the time, like I understand it, but like as a designer, it's kind of limiting sometimes. Like they're like, we can only use things from Monotype or Adobe Fonts, but most of, if not all of the client work that I've done, they'll have an Adobe license, obviously. So Adobe Fonts, like anything you find on Adobe Fonts is pretty much cleared for commercial use, which is just so helpful because I can, you can literally just check in like Illustrator, for example, the Adobe Fonts little check mark, and we'll go into that as I'm designing. But you'll be able to just like know that you can use all these in a design. So it's super helpful for that in that respect. And yeah, again, like with all these other inspiration sources, I just kind of favored anything that is interesting to me. And some of the stuff I end up like adding to like my Creative Cloud. And some of it I'm just like kind of looking through because I don't want to have too many fonts where I'm just like scrolling forever. But there's just so much. And I feel like this will be the perfect way to start this poster. So without further ado, I think I'm going to start in Illustrator for this just because it's good for type, and maybe if we want to add texture, if we have time at the end, we'll put it into Photoshop. But
sounds good. We have about 20 or so minutes for the design part. So
that's perfect. I'll try to do it quick because I don't think it should be too complex. It'll be I'll kind of talk through my process for it, but I think we can kind of get through it in that amount of time. So I'm going to do 4x5, which is just good for like a vertical Instagram post. And yeah, we can just kind of go through my process. The way I'd like to design is like obviously would have some sort of mood board or reference. I think for this, we're going to be working in like a slightly different way. Like we'll let the fonts inspire the design. But I like to work like almost like macro to micro. So I'll just go like the big overarching concepts, like let's get the layout, let's get the fonts we want to use. And then from there, refining, almost like remixing kind of, like refining certain elements. There's another music parallel. There's so many, honestly. I could talk about like parallels between music and design forever. But yeah, like let's record the demo and then let's refine the mix after, essentially.
Yep.
So yeah, like I was saying, we just have this little show activated fonts, and then we have all my Adobe fonts, and I'm going to add probably a few more of these interesting looking ones from my favorites right now. And these have probably been like years of me just going on Adobe Fonts and noticing stuff I like and just adding it. That's the other thing too, is it's always updated. Like I think that new Astro one may have been like extremely recent, if not like the last few days. So it's yet another source of inspiration. And I think
the library continues to grow.
Exactly.
Every month.
Which is super exciting because like I've definitely had like that excitement, like figuring out like a favorite font of mine has been added, and then I'm like, okay, boom, now I can use this for cover art pretty much. Otherwise, it would have been tough to like figure out the license or pay for like an expensive license without guarantee that it would even work. So I think what we'll do is I'll just kind of pick one font and we'll do all the different. Is everyone familiar with the song Ray Schreiber, I Ain't Got No Type? It's I would say like 2016 kind of rap hit, but like very, very pop, very pop leaning though.
I might have heard it, but it's not jogging my memory, but I'm definitely going to listen to it after this.
It's definitely not about fonts. I ain't got no.
But to us, everything is about fonts.
And I'm already kind of seeing how this is going to work with it actually works really nicely because you have the small I, then ain't is like a little bit longer. So those will fit nicely together. Got is a little bit wider, nose a little bit shorter. And then type, we're going to do some really wide thing to fill out the bottom. So I think for I, for example, we're going to want something that has like a lot of character because just like a little rectangle isn't really going to do it. And I think there's like this like intricate kind of almost like 3D type one that I just added. I'm going to go on to Adobe Fonts just to check what it was called.
Someone loves the song. We have someone in the chat.
It was, yeah, HWT American. And that's the other thing too, is like a lot of these other sites, you can just go and like find the Foundry, for example, and there will be more often than not a bunch of fonts kind of in that same vein that can also like continue to inspire you. So it's another thing where you can just get in a rabbit hole. There's recommended fonts or like similar fonts at the bottom of the pages. So there's just too many almost like ways that you can kind of like figure out a vibe and like record or just kind of curate what you're looking for. But again, so for this example, we're going to be going like kind of all over the place. And that's kind of what we want. So I like that I ain't. Let's find something else that looks good. I love having the preview here because I can just cycle through. I think a little black letter could look pretty cool. So this is already a pretty interesting juxtaposition. I think so far it's working for me. Maybe I'm completely delusional here, but let's fill this up so we kind of, if we had a little bit more time, I'd do like some sort of grid or like border, but we're just going to eyeball things for now. And essentially what I'm going to do is just go through and look at what the most interesting font for each word is. Because I feel that's the thing with fonts is like, you know, one font for a certain word will just, for some reason, like not like the symmetry's off, like the letters don't fit together well. So you kind of just have to try stuff and throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks. So having all of these kind of like pre-licensed ones, I think is super helpful. I like this God. It's a little bit similar to the eye, so maybe we'll save that for the bottom. This is a crazy font, Megavolt. Also, if anyone has any suggestions in the chat, I kind of like this bubblegum type font. Let's see. Nothing really stood out to me, so I'm going to do one last little scroll. And we could also just go on, I like this. Just classic Cooper. Let's see, no. Okay, so also juxtaposition is definitely like a thing that I think about a lot. So we've got like a bold kind of like curvy font. So I'd say something a little bit on the lighter side and probably with some angles would go good next to it.
I think especially when you're combining many fonts on one canvas, you'd probably want to go with contrast being in juxtaposition being a main thing there.
Andrey, are you going to put a script?
Serif is the right one there.
Yeah.
I really got my work cut out. I'm in my own bubble.
Tell Andrey he should use a script.
Try one more.
Andrey, are you able to hear Ari? Just curious.
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. But you can hear me.
I can hear you, but for some reason I cannot hear Ari.
Okay.
Well, I promise I wasn't ignoring you.
I know.
Well,
I know you're too nice to ignore me.
I missed probably so much good conversation.
Does the audience hear me?
I'm liking this. I think it's a little similar to the eye, but for some reason, like the fact that it's not filled in is giving, and it's also angular, I think is kind of like looking good next to it. I think we'll find something wider for type, like I said.
Audience can hear me.
The audience can hear Ari, but Andrey, you
Tell
can't.
him, ask him if he can use a script.
If you could relay, maybe what?
I think it would be really cool if it was a script with lowercase and not all uppercase. Can we try that?
Ari says, try using a script font for type.
That's such a good idea. Yes.
And try lowercase or title case. Yes, with a script and see how that goes.
Absolutely. Also, lifesaver here is this little classification. There's no way I don't have a single.
No
script fonts are not my kind of like forte.
Not your go-to, huh?
See. I guess I have I guess I do have a type when it comes to type. Let's see what we got on, but obviously very quickly can find some good script fonts.
And also with the retro vibe, there might be, are there any script fonts, Ari, in the Art Deco tag?
No.
Okay.
Let's see what we got here.
Maybe not. I could have steered.
There's tons of retro script fonts. It's just not in the Art Deco tag.
Okay, yeah. I guess not. I would check under script. Yeah, she confirmed. There's no brush script or calligraphy.
Oh, let's just do a script. We don't need calligraphic. Let's see.
You can also go on Find More in Illustrator. He doesn't need to leave Illustrator.
Ari said that you could also go to Find More in Illustrator and browse that way if you're so inclined, but this is also working.
The Find More. True.
Someone on YouTube, Andrey, asked, are the fonts you're using available in Photoshop or did you add them? I think the fonts we're using today are Adobe fonts. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the other cool thing is they will work in both Photoshop and Illustrator. Oh my God, I don't, you actually use this Find More tool enough as I should, because I forgot it existed, but this is actually perfect. Nice. Thank you. Okay, I kind of like this sloop one. I feel like I've added the sloop one, so that's okay. That's not, we need something a little wider, I think.
Whoa.
Ooh.
That's a pretty cool one.
Yeah, DJR who makes this font, has a bunch of other good stuff too.
And that's the thing. I feel like a lot of the ones, I'm going to do all caps for this one just so it fills out the space a little nicer. I think visually it's already kind of like, it's not almost like thinking of them not as fonts, but as kind of like graphics in a way, because they're also stylistic, I think is a good way to think about it. Because if someone was to tell you, like, do these fonts go together? No, they absolutely do not. But for some reason in my head, this is actually like nice to look at. Okay, so we have a lot of like kind of blank space at the bottom. So a lot of the time what I like to do is almost like a sort of, well, we could do a graphic, but I don't know if we have time for that. One thing we could try is just like a block of text, and we could do like let's do like the Wikipedia entry on the Ray Shremmerd song.
Nice.
This is fun if you need just kind of like some sort of block text just to put at the bottom of the design. If you're just doing obviously for like, your own Instagram or something. I'm a big fan of just doing a Wikipedia search.
Also, I ain't got no strings to hold me down now is stuck in my head because the I ain't got no. So
I'm not familiar with that one. Who's that one by?
That's from Pinocchio, if you're familiar with the
Got no strings to hold me down.
Yeah, that one.
I wonder.
It's so trendy right now, Ben.
Like that could be that different, but with the same words. All right, let's do also another cool feature too is just the change case. It's a little bit different in Photoshop, but I think for this kind of like underneath block text, I honestly always just love using Helvetica. That's my or Neue Haas is actually like the closest thing in Adobe Fonts that is like scratches that Helvetica itch, and honestly is like featured in most of my designs.
It's more beautiful in my opinion.
Just like the kerning and everything. Looks really good. So a few other kind of little tidbits too that I didn't really go over, but when I'm designing is like letter spacing and kerning is definitely like a big thing. That's usually, like I said, like is kind of like in the refining step of the design, because like you don't want to get bogged down, especially if you're going to change fonts. The kerning will be completely different for every font. But for example, like just having, again, I like retro kind of designs and everything, and they would always have like just the tightest letter spacing. So I'm a little bit more kind of partial to that, even though it definitely like it depends. It needs to be on a like case by case basis, because that'll absolutely like kind of mess with your like legibility and everything. So being conscious of that is definitely important, but I do like tight spacing. Okay.
Also, do you know Electron, the people who make the Octatrack and the Digitact and all of those things?
That I do not. No.
Oh, they make drum machines and synthesizers.
Amazing.
Anyways, they Neue Haus Grotesque is their font, and all of their drum machines and synthesizers have Neue Haus on it. So
that's like such a fun kind of source of inspiration. Is just like the different fonts that they have on. Honestly, a lot of the time, like music gear and everything, if I'm looking for kind of like a retro vibe, like I don't know, just literally the logo on like the pedal or whatever is such like an interesting kind of subset of design, like whoever's designing that, or even like plugins, if you're just like working in the box, like just like the fonts they use in plugins and everything.
I bet if you search vintage guitar pedals on Flickr, you'll find a lot of inspiring designs for sure.
That's a good idea. And I bet you that's probably like one of those little links on Emma's like page, because it gets really, really niche in there.
Nice.
Like there's like Vietnamese candy wrappers and stuff like that. And it's some of the most beautiful design you've ever seen, but it's like probably seen by absolutely no one. Okay, I'm liking how this is looking. There's kind of like a lot of white space here. So maybe we just kind of leave this space underneath blank, or maybe we find some sort of graphic or stock photo. Or we could even add a few more. I guess we're kind of running short on time.
We've probably got about maybe 7 minutes left for this, although we could stretch that a little bit and leave less time at the end for questions and or, sharing other work. So if we want to stick with this for a little longer, I think we can do it.
I think I'll kind of wrap this a little bit, and I'd love to answer some questions too if anyone has them. A little hack that I'm going to use here is when like color is such an important aspect, I think, with design, obviously, and you can use it to your advantage. So for example, in this design right now, like that white space kind of looks huge, and ideally we would fill it with something. But I just didn't plan out exactly what the layout was going to be. Also, just so you know, this was like a very authentic, like this is actually how I work. I didn't just like design this out beforehand. Like I wanted to actually show you kind of walking through how I do it. But I think a way that I'm going to try to work around that is adding color to the back. And then making the type a lighter color. So almost like that space kind of will be, it'll feel less like negative space because the letters are kind of becoming a little bit more of the negative space, if that makes any sense.
Yes. If you wanted a little more text, you could do the hyphen, like it's a quote and the artist name if you wanted to.
There we go. That's what we needed. Yep. And I think that could be the perfect opportunity for. That's another thing when you're designing is never, I feel like sending, if you have designer friends or anything, like sending like a work in progress, or if you're working like with a creative director or something, send a work in progress. Like you'll be able to create designs in such a more efficient way if you're getting like, yeah, just getting more input from other people. Okay, I'm gonna completely forget how to spell this. It's Ray Shremmerd is the artist, and it's the word eardrummers, which was like their label or something in like backwards. Ray Shremmerd.
Nice.
Okay, this is exactly what this design needed.
Yes.
This is perfect. And I'm gonna like stagger it and have these kind of fit.
Ah, yeah.
Here we go. I actually kind of like it on the same.
Nice.
Okay, and I'm just gonna loosen the line spacing so we kind of fill in that space. I'm pretty happy with this. I don't know, what does the chat think? Is this good? Is this awful? I like visually, I like it. I actually like, this is something I would make, and maybe this with a little extra work and love and care becomes an Instagram post. So yeah, also, yeah, I think this is a perfect opportunity for questions or anyone ideas, anything. I'd love to hear and like respond to anything about what I do, this design, my process, anything.
Everyone watching live, get your questions in now. I wanted to, a couple things. So that little text on the bottom, it totally reminds me of a movie poster at the very bottom where it has all the who did what's in the.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of that. And then I guess now I can ask my question, which is how do you stay excited about so many things and not get too overwhelmed or burned out or anything like that? And maybe sometimes you do and you take breaks, but how do you do that?
Definitely. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with like the creative block aspect. And I'd recommend having, even if it's just a hobby, like something like music is definitely like, there's a lot of parallels, but it's a completely different like set of, I guess, like parts of your brain that you're working. So I think having something outside of like, especially if design is kind of like your main work, your kind of like main like career work type situation, then having something that's like creative, but is not specifically like, you don't need to be making money or something doing it, or like, it's not like, there's not like the pressure of like getting it right or something, just having a completely different creative outlet. And it doesn't even need to be creative. It could be just something else you enjoy doing. I think really just kind of, you'll just like, it'll switch your mindset a little bit. And then if you have the luxury of time, I think just leaving things alone, starting a new project, doing something completely different, and then coming back to it, like will almost always give me if it doesn't give me more inspiration, it gives me like clarity at least on what is like not working or something. So I think like having something that's just completely different, to just like switch your brain into like a different mode of thinking and then coming back is super helpful. Having different creative outlets, whether they be like something you do professionally or not. With design specifically, sometimes getting outside, like if you're someone that does like a lot of typographic stuff like this and like things aren't working. Recently what I've been doing a lot of is doing stuff like mixed media, like a thing that I've done on like a few different recent projects has been literally using sriracha as a like doing typography with sriracha essentially. So this tour poster I did for Blue to Tiger started as sriracha text, and like that is the absolute like easiest way to just make something cool and unexpected, because it is completely unexpected. Like you're just
Yeah.
drawing something. It's not, there's no expectation of how it's going to work.
There's a real sense of whimsy and fun with that
Yeah, this is another one.
approach, right? Yeah.
Definitely. And like, yeah, so just kind of figuring out, pursuing things that excite you, like even if it doesn't seem like it's something that'll be helpful for a design, like yeah, whether it be retro movie posters, like I think really design clicked for me and I found like my passion when I found these like retro kind of design resources, because this was like boom, I know what my like what interests me. So sometimes like if you feel like you're you don't know what you want to do, maybe you just haven't found that like key inspiration or key kind of like driver of your aesthetic, or yeah, maybe you haven't even found the aesthetic yet.
Nice.
So I think yeah, looking for inspiration in random places, going for a walk, listening to music, or whatever it is you're kind of like happy creative places is definitely super important.
Nice. Mwendwa in the chat asked, what inspires your layout? And I think you could take that as this particular layout, but also in general, maybe where do you look for layout inspiration or ideas?
Definitely. I think it's kind of twofold. A lot of the times, and I'm a big proponent of this, is not specifically like going and copying a layout, but I think it's almost like not to use the musical analogy again, but there's like only so many different types of layouts you can do. Like it's so many different types of chords you could do, or that kind of thing. So if you like, for example, here's a really cool layout. You've got like it's split up into half, type, image, left aligned, like all caps. No one is going to ever call you out on this reference. So I think like almost like sampling and like taking different bits from design that inspires you, or even having like a folder of layouts you like. And then from there, kind of whatever you have to do it obviously on a case by case basis, slash like what you're working on, like optimize it for whatever you're working on. But I think a lot of the time I'll just like find layouts I like, get inspired by that, and then kind of tweak and get it to what it needs to be with the tools you're working with, or like the different elements you're working with. But yeah, I think it's like a really quick and easy way to come out with a layout that you like, because like you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. Like someone already made a cool layout, and again, it's not like you're copying anything like one to one.
If you like that one you showed, if you changed the fonts in the image, it's an entirely different design
It's
at
a
that
completely
point.
different design that like is original and your own. There's too many like examples here, but yeah, especially like these like they're like layouts that like don't look like they make sense, but like the proof is like here, you can see it. These look good. So you know that it'll work even with different fonts or anything. Yeah.
Nice. I have one final question. How do you balance personal projects versus client work? And how does that kind of shake out?
Definitely. I think for me personally, a lot of the things that I do, well, it's I have a little bit more of the luxury of like being a like I think actually anyone can do this, especially if you're like in the early stages, is find the client work, I guess, that excites you. slash like, for example, like for me, it's music. Like if there's a musician I like, I will be passionate about like the art that I'm creating for them. So I think trying to almost like curate and find like a community that you like to design with will make the stuff that like is work technically not feel as much as work. And I think it's definitely important too to like make just designs that like don't have a goal in mind. Almost just treating it more as like art as opposed to like graphic design. And just kind of creating things that are just fun to make for the sake of creating them. And I think if you're doing that, you're going to be I think you'll learn like infinitely more than doing something with a specific goal in mind. Um, I think that's really important. Like for example, like when I used to do like Twitch streams and like this, for example, I'm like learning just kind of on the fly because there's not the pressure of like only doing what you know because you're under a certain amount of time. Like you need to be under a certain amount of time. Just kind of making things for the sake of making things, like you will learn, I think, like infinitely more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Andrey, thank you so much for joining us today. The links to Andrey's stuff are on the screen right now, and also Jack posted things in the chat, so go check out Andrey's stuff on TikTok. He also sells really cool textures and just design assets for all kinds of stuff, so if you're interested in that, go check it out.
And one font, more coming maybe.
And one font and more coming. Excellent. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know what happened with the audio, so
sorry, Ari.
on Ari's side, but it was very great having you, and hopefully we can have you back again soon, and maybe a font of yours might show up in Adobe Fonts someday, and people will be able to use that.
Awesome.
So
yeah,
yeah, excellent.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Bye bye,
Thanks
everybody.
everyone for joining. Bye.
Bye.